fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
The rain didn't wash away the sins of the city. It only made them slicker, harder to hold on to. I crouched on the gargoyle-studded ledge of the Sanctum Cathedral, the stone rough and freezing against my palms, watching the alleyway below through the scope of a high-caliber crossbow. You are a descendant of Van Helsing. You are supposed to slay monsters, not lay them. My Uncle Silas's voice still rattled around my skull, a shrill memory that competed with the thunder rolling over the Gothic skyline. He had screamed it at me 3 hours ago when he found the silk handkerchief in my pocket, one that smelled of ozone and ancient dust. He didn't know who it belonged to, only that the scent wasn't human. He was right, of course. My bloodline was a chain of iron and silver, binding me to a duty I had never asked for. But Silas didn't understand the evolution of the hunt. He didn't understand them. Below, the shadows detached themselves from the brickwork. 2 figures. Even from 3 stories up, the aura of power they exuded was enough to make the fine hairs on my arms stand up. One was broad, a mountain of muscle contained within a distressed leather jacket Kale, a Lycan Alpha whose growl could vibrate through a woman's chest from across a room. The other was slender, elegant, moving with a fluid grace that defied gravity, Lucian, a vampire elder, old as the cathedral I perched upon, wearing a tailored charcoal coat that cost more than my entire arsenal. They were sworn enemies by lore, yet tonight they walked shoulder to shoulder. That was the anomaly the Order had sent me to correct. I adjusted the scope. My crosshairs hovered over Lucian's pale, marble-sharp cheekbone. He was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, terrifyingly perfect. I shifted the aim to Kale. He was raw, heat radiating off him in visible waves against the cold rain, his golden eyes scanning the rooftops. I should pull the trigger, a silver bolt for the wolf, a hawthorn stake for the leech. But my finger froze. "Come down, Elara," Lucian's voice drifted up, not a shout, but a whisper carried on the wind, piercing the storm with supernatural clarity. "The gargoyles are poor company for a woman of your fire." "We can smell you, hunter," Kale added, his voice a rough bark that made my stomach flip. "You smell like fear and arousal." "Fuck you," I muttered, though I knew they could hear that too. I holstered the crossbow and engaged the grapple line. There was no point hiding. I dropped, the line singing as I descended, landing in a crouch 10 feet from them. I stood slowly, hand resting on the hilt of my silver-edged machete. "Silas sent you," Lucian noted, his crimson eyes boring into mine. He didn't look afraid. He looked amused, hungry. "He thinks you're plotting a war," I said, the rain plastering my hair to my face. "We are," Kale grunted, stepping forward. He towered over me, a wall of aggression and heat, just not against the humans. "Then who?" Before they could answer, the ground beneath us shuddered. It wasn't thunder. The cobblestones cracked, and a screech that sounded like tearing metal erupted from the sewer grate between us. "Hellspawn," Lucian hissed, his amusement vanishing instantly. His face contorted, fangs descending with a lethal snap. "The Order's wards have failed." A massive, chitinous limb exploded from the ground, knocking me backward. I hit the wet pavement hard, my breath leaving me in a wheeze. The creature that emerged was a nightmare of multiple limbs and dripping slime, a void stalker, immune to traditional physics, hungry for magic-rich blood. "Elara," Kale roared. The beast lunged for me. I scrambled back, fumbling for my blade, but I wasn't fast enough. A blur of gray and black intercepted the monster. Kale slammed into the creature, his body shifting midair, bones cracking and reshaping until a massive timber wolf with fur like storm clouds wrestled the beast. Lucian was there a second later, moving faster than sight, pulling me to my feet. His grip was like a vice, his skin agonizingly cold against my wrist. "We cannot fight a stalker in the open," Lucian shouted over the creature's shrieks. "The Undercroft now." "I'm not going anywhere with you," I yelled, even as I pulled a phosphorus grenade from my belt. "Die here or live with us, choose, Van Helsing." I looked at the writhing monster, then at the heavy iron door of the cathedral's crypts nearby. Kale was losing ground, the stalker was too big. I pulled the pin on the grenade and hurled it at the beast. "Kale, move." The wolf leaped back just as the white fire exploded. It blinded the beast momentarily. Lucian didn't wait. He swept me up into his arms, bridal style, humiliatingly effortless, and blurred toward the crypt door. Kale, shifting back to human form, stumbled after us, bleeding from a gash in his side. We crashed through the heavy oak doors, and Lucian kicked them shut, slamming the heavy iron bolt home just as the stalker slammed against the wood on the other side. The impact shook dust from the ceiling. We were sealed in, trapped in the dark, damp silence of the dead. I scrambled out of Lucian's arms, backing up until my spine hit a stone sarcophagus. I drew my gun, aiming it between them. "Don't," Kale rasped, sliding down the wall, clutching his bleeding side. His golden eyes burned in the gloom. "We're the only thing keeping you from being eaten, princess." The creature pounded on the door again. The wood groaned. "It will hold for a few hours," Lucian said calmly, dusting off his coat. He looked at me, his gaze dropping to the gun, then up to my eyes. A slow, predatory smile touched his lips, just enough time for us to get acquainted. The air in the crypt was stale, heavy with the scent of dry earth, incense, and the metallic tang of fresh blood. Specifically, Kale's blood. "Put the gun down, Elara," Lucian said softly. He moved with a predator's stillness, not stepping toward me, yet his presence filled the small stone chamber. "If we wanted you dead, you would have never touched the pavement outside." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Logic told me he was right. A vampire elder and a Lycan Alpha could dismantle a lone hunter in seconds. But instinct, generations of Van Helsing instinct, screamed that I was the mouse inside the snake's coil. "Why did you save me?" I kept the aim steady, though my arms ached. "Because the enemy of my enemy is my complication," Lucian drawled. He turned his back on my gun, dismissing the threat entirely, and knelt beside Kale. The Lycan was groaning, his back against the cold stone wall. The gash on his side was deep, weeping dark blood that sizzled faintly. Void poison. "He's not healing," I whispered, the hunter and me taking over. Lycans healed instantly. "The stalker's claws are laced with necrotic magic," Lucian said, his voice tight. He looked up at me, the crimson in his eyes swirling with genuine concern. "I cannot heal this. My magic is of the blood, cold and static. He needs heat. He needs a binder." I hesitated, then lowered the gun. I hated that I knew what he meant. Silver nitrate and fire cauterization, or a biological anchor, Lucian finished. Someone to ground his humanity so his beast can focus on the poison. "You want me to touch him?" Kale let out a rough laugh that turned into a cough. "Scared I'll bite, hunter, or scared you'll like it?" "Shut up," I snapped, but I holstered the weapon. I walked over to him, dropping to my knees. Up close, Kale was overwhelming. He smelled of rain, wet dog, and cedarwood. The heat radiating off him was like a furnace. His shirt was shredded, revealing a torso of corded muscle slick with sweat and blood. I reached out, my hands trembling slightly. "This is going to hurt." "Do it," Kale grunted, tilting his head back against the stone, exposing the thick column of his throat. I placed my hands over the wound. I didn't have magic, but I had the Van Helsing blood, resistant to curses, stabilizing. I pressed down. Kale roared, his back arching off the floor. His hands shot out, gripping my hips with bruising force. His fingers dug into my tack gear, pulling me closer until I was straddling his thigh. "Easy, wolf," Lucian murmured. The vampire moved behind me. I froze as I felt his chest press against my back. He was a wall of ice to Kale's fire. "I need to stabilize his heart rate," Lucian whispered, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. "And you need to keep him grounded, don't let go." Lucian's hand slid down my arms, his long, cool fingers interlacing with mine over Kale's wound. The contrast was dizzying, fire and ice, life and death, and me, the conduit in the middle. A circuit closed. I gasped as a jolt of energy shot through me. It wasn't pain, it was pure sensation. I felt Kale's agony, his primal rage, but also his intense, confusing attraction to me. And from Lucian, I felt a centuries-old loneliness and a dark, possessive hunger that made my knees weak. "Focus, Elara," Lucian commanded, his voice dropping an octave. He pressed closer, his hips slotting against my backside. "Look at him." I looked down. Kale's eyes were blown wide, the gold consuming the white. He was staring at me with an intensity that stripped me bare. "You're warm," Kale rasped, his grip on my hips tightening, pulling me flush against his groin. Even through the layers of clothing, the hardness of him was undeniable. The poison is retreating, Lucian noted, his nose grazing the sensitive skin of my neck, inhaling deeply. But the adrenaline remains. My breathing hitched, the atmosphere in the crypt shifted from medical emergency to something thick and suffocatingly erotic. The danger outside, the banging on the door, faded into a rhythmic backdrop. You have the blood of the hunter, Cale growled, leaning forward, his face inches from mine. It sings to the beast, it wants to conquer you. I'm not here to be conquered, I whispered, though my voice lacked conviction. My body was betraying me. My nipples hardened against the friction of my vest, my core clenched with a sudden, wet heat. No, Lucian purred, his tongue darting out to taste the pulse point beneath my ear. Not conquered, claimed. We're trapped, I managed to say, trying to pull away, but neither of them let me. We need to focus on escaping. We are focusing, Cale murmured. He released one hand from my hip to brush a damp lock of hair from my face. His touch was surprisingly gentle, calloused and warm. The wolf is calm because you are here. If you leave, the poison returns. That's a lie, I breathed. Is it? Lucian challenged. He moved his hand from my wrist to my waist, splaying his fingers over my stomach. Your heart is beating faster, Elara, not from fear. I can hear the difference. The thudding against the iron door stopped abruptly. Silence fell. Then a sound of stone grinding on stone came from the back of the crypt, the secret tunnels of the catacombs. They found another way in, Cale snarled, his eyes snapping to the darkness behind us. No, Lucian corrected, his body tensing against mine. Not the beast, something else. I tried to stand, but Lucian's arm banded across my chest, pinning me back against him, holding me prisoner between the vampire and the werewolf. Stay, Lucian ordered. If you move, the bond breaks. What bond? I demanded. Lucian leaned over my shoulder, his fangs grazing the junction of my neck and shoulder, the one we just accidentally forged in blood. The grinding noise grew louder, echoing through the ossuary shelves lining the walls. But the immediate threat wasn't the noise, it was the electricity arcing between the three of us. The blood bond, I had read about it in the forbidden texts of the Van Helsing library, mythical nonsense, I had thought. A synchronization of souls born of life-saving magic. It didn't feel like magic, it felt like a drug. Cale's pain had receded, replaced by a feverish vitality. He looked at me not as a savior, but as sustenance. And Lucian, the vampire, was practically vibrating against my back, his cold aura seeping into my marrow. We need to move, I said, my voice trembling. Not yet, Cale growled. He leaned forward, burying his face in the crook of my neck opposite Lucian. He inhaled sharply, his nose nudging the collar of my tactical jacket aside. You smell like gunpowder and vanilla. It's driving me insane. Cale the tunnel, Lucian warned, though he didn't pull away. Instead, his hand slid up my torso, his thumb tracing the underside of my breast through the fabric. If we break contact now, the shock could kill the wolf. We must taper off. Taper off, I choked out. You're groping me. I am grounding us, Lucian corrected, his voice like velvet over gravel. Your pulse is the metronome. If you panic, he crashes. I'm panicking because you're biting my neck. I haven't bitten you yet, Liebling, Lucian whispered against my skin, though the temptation is significant. Suddenly, Cale surged upward. He didn't break the circle. He simply pulled me with him as he stood, forcing Lucian to step back but keep his hands on us. Cale backed me into the stone wall, his heavy body pinning me. The tunnel is clear for now, Cale muttered, his golden eyes scanning my face. But the storm outside is masking our scent. If we leave this room, the stalker finds us instantly. So we wait, I asked, looking up at him. The sheer size of him was overwhelming. We wait, Cale agreed, his hand cupped my jaw, his thumb brushing my lower lip, and we finish what we started. We didn't start anything, I protested weakly. You started it the moment you didn't shoot, Lucian said, appearing at my side. He boxed me in, his hand resting on the wall above my head. You feel it, Elara, the pull. It's why you hunt us, not to kill, but to find. That's not true, my family. Fuck your family, Cale growled. He crashed his mouth down on mine. It wasn't a tentative kiss, it was an invasion. It was hot, wet, and tasted of iron and desire. I gasped, and his tongue swept into my mouth, claiming me. My hands, which should have been reaching for my knife, tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. Lucian made a low noise in his throat, a sound of hunger. He didn't wait. His cold hand gripped the back of my neck, tilting my head to the side. He kissed the sensitive cord of my throat, sucking hard enough to bruise, hard enough to threaten the vein. I was being devoured from two sides, caught in a sensory overload of fire and ice. Kale's hand slid down my body, gripping my thigh and hiking my leg up around his waist. He ground his hips against mine, the friction sending sparks behind my eyelids. "You are ours," Kale murmured against my lips. "Say it." "I'm a Van Helsing," I panted, breaking the kiss to gasp for air. "Names mean nothing in the dark," Lucian whispered, his lips moving to my ear. He bit down gently on the lobe, sending a shiver straight to my core. "Only blood matters, and yours calls to us." My resistance was crumbling. The sheer biological imperative, amplified by the mystical bond, was washing away a lifetime of indoctrination. I wanted them. I wanted the danger. I wanted to be ruined by them. I reached out, my hand finding Lucian's chest, feeling the slow, powerful thud of his ancient heart. With my other hand, I gripped Kale's bicep. "If we survive this," I whispered, "Silas will kill me." "Let him try," Kale snarled, kissing my jawline. Lucian's hand moved to the zipper of my tactical vest. "We will tear the world apart before we let them touch you." The zipper lowered with a sound that seemed deafening in the small space. Cool air hit my heated skin. Kale groaned, burying his face in my cleavage as Lucian pulled the jacket open. But before skin could meet skin, the stone wall at the back of the crypt exploded inward. Dust and debris showered us. Kale threw himself over me, shielding my body with his own as rocks the size of heads crashed down. A second void stalker screeched from the darkness of the tunnel, its mandibles clicking, glowing with green necrotic energy. And behind it, stepping through the dust like a wraith, was a man in a long coat holding a glowing amulet. "Uncle Silas." I knew it, Silas spat, his voice echoing in the ruined chamber. He looked at me, entangled with the monsters, my clothes disheveled, my face flushed with lust. "You truly are lost, Elara, hoard out to the beasts." The shame hit me first, hot and acidic, then came the rage. Kale shifted off me, placing himself between me and the threat, a low, rumbling growl building in his chest that shook the floor. Lucian moved to the flank, his elegance replaced by a terrifying stillness, his fingers lengthening into talons. "Uncle Silas," I said, standing up and zipping my vest. My hands were steady now. The haze of lust had crystallized into cold clarity. "You summoned the stalkers." "To purge the city," Silas sneered, holding the amulet high. The green gem pulsed in time with the chittering of the monster behind him. "Whatever collateral damage occurs is necessary. You were supposed to be the bait, Elara, a martyr for the cause." "Bait," the word tasted like ash. "You sent me here to die so you could trap them." "I sent you to do your duty," Silas screamed. "Kill them now while they are distracted." He gestured to the stalker. The beast lunged, not at me, but at Kale. "No," I screamed. Kale met the beast head-on, shifting into his Lycan form mid-leap. The collision was a thunderclap of fur and chitin, but this stalker was bigger, juiced on the magic from Silas's amulet. Lucian blurred toward Silas, but the old man twisted the amulet, and a barrier of green force slammed the vampire backward into the stone wall. Lucian slumped, momentarily stunned. "It was just me." "Shoot the wolf, Elara," Silas commanded. "Fulfill your legacy." I looked at Kale, fighting for his life, his fur matted with blood. I looked at Lucian, struggling to rise, his eyes burning with fury directed at my uncle. "Slay monsters, not lay them." I drew my crossbow. Silas smiled, "Good girl." I raised the weapon, aiming squarely at the chaotic brawl of wolf and monster. "I am a Van Helsing," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "and we hunt those who prey on the innocent." I shifted my aim 3 inches to the right. Thwag. The silver-tipped bolt didn't hit the wolf, it didn't hit the stalker. It slammed directly into the green gem of the amulet in Silas's hand. The crystal shattered. The magical backlash was instantaneous. Silas screamed as the green energy whipped back onto him, throwing him across the room. The force field around him vanished. The stalker, cut off from its power source, faltered, its movements becoming sluggish. "Now," I yelled. Kale roared, sensing the creature's weakness. He ripped one of the stalker's primary limbs clean off. The beast shrieked. Lucian was on his feet in a heartbeat. He didn't go for Sila's, he went for the stalker, flanking it. With a movement too fast to track, he drove his hand into the creature's thorax and ripped out its pulsating heart. The monster collapsed into a heap of dissolving slime. Silence returned to the crypt, heavier than before. Silas groaned from the corner, broken and bleeding. Kale, shifting back to human form, naked, bloody, and magnificent, stalked toward him. Lucian was right beside him. "Don't kill him," I said. They both stopped, looking back at me. Kale's jaw was set, his eyes wild. Lucian looked disappointed. "He tried to kill you," Kale growled. "He's my family," I said, walking past them to stand over my uncle. Silas looked up at me with pure hatred. "You're a traitor," he spat, blood bubbling on his lips. "You've damned your soul." "Maybe," I said. I crouched down, retrieving the shattered remnants of the amulet, "but I know who the real monsters are now." I stood up and looked at the two men waiting for me, the vampire and the wolf, my enemies, my something else. "Leave him," I told them. "Let him go back to the Order and tell them that the Van Helsing line has new management." Lucian smiled, a genuine, terrifying expression of pride. "As you wish." We left Sila's in the ruins of the crypt. We walked out into the night, the rain having finally stopped. The air was crisp, clean. We reached the extraction van I had hidden 2 blocks away. I leaned against the side of the vehicle, the adrenaline finally crashing. My knees gave way, but I didn't fall. Kale was there, catching me. Lucian was at my other side. "You chose us," Kale said, his voice filled with wonder. He ran his hand down my arm, his touch searing. "I chose myself," I corrected softly, looking up at him. "But I wouldn't mind finishing that conversation we started in the crypt." Lucian laughed, a dark, melodic sound. He leaned in, brushing a kiss against my forehead. "The night is young, Elara Van Helsing, and we have an eternity to discuss the finer points of laying monsters." Kale smirked, pulling me flush against his chest, heedless of the streetlights. I planned to be very persuasive. I looked at the city skyline, then back at the 2 deadly, beautiful creatures who were now mine to hunt with and mine to hold. "Shut up and drive," I said, opening the door, "before I change my mind and stake you both." "You wouldn't dare," Lucian whispered, sliding into the driver's seat. He was right, I wouldn't. The hunt was over. The romance had just begun.